I remember the mornings with a clarity that feels almost cruel. The sun would filter through the sheer curtains in our bedroom, casting soft shadows on the walls. My wife, Anna, would be nestled beside me, her dark hair sprawled across the pillow like a halo. She was my partner, my confidant, the woman I thought I knew inside and out. We had built a life together that felt solid, like the foundation of a sturdy house. I had every reason to believe in the sanctity of our marriage, or so I thought. Anna was in her final year of university, studying psychology, her passion evident in the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of her classes. I often marveled at her intelligence, her drive, and her ability to connect with people. She had a knack for understanding emotions, which is perhaps why I never questioned her late nights spent at the campus library or the hours she dedicated to studying. I trusted her implicitly, believing that her commitment to her education would never come at the expense of our relationship. Looking back, I can see the signs. The late-night phone calls that she brushed off as study, sessions with classmates, the occasional text she received that she quickly tucked away, and her newfound interest in dressing up when she hadn't before. I was so wrapped up in my belief that our love was unbreakable that I ignored the subtle shifts in her behavior. It was as if I was living in a dream, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Our weekends were usually filled with laughter and the simple joys of life. We would cook together, trying new recipes, or take long walks in the nearby park hand in hand. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and a shared vision of the future. I had even begun to think about proposing, about making this bond permanent. But as I sat in the living room one evening, flipping through the channels on the TV, a gnawing feeling settled in my gut. I couldn't shake the sense that something was off, that the blissful life I imagined was teetering on the edge of an unseen precipice. It was in those quiet moments, when the world was still, that I began to question everything. I started to wonder if I was truly as blind as I felt. The thought scared me. I didn't want to believe that my wife, the woman I loved, could betray me. It felt too heavy to bear. Yet the more I thought about it, the more I felt a sense of dread creeping in. I had no idea that my life was about to change forever. One fateful day, as I returned home early from work, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. The door to our apartment was slightly ajar, and a strange apprehension washed over me. Anna had told me she would be at a study group, but something in my gut told me to push the door open, to step inside and confront whatever lay ahead. Little did I know, I was about to discover a truth that would shatter my world. As I entered, the air felt thick with tension, an unspoken weight that hung between the walls. I called out for Anna, but the silence that answered me was deafening. I noticed her laptop open on the kitchen table, a half-empty glass of wine beside it. My heart raced as I moved further into the apartment, my instincts screaming that something was wrong. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, and I was powerless to stop it. It was then that I saw the text message pop up on her phone, resting innocently on the couch. A name I didn't recognize flashed across the screen, followed by words that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive." In that moment, everything changed. The foundation of trust I had built crumbled, and I was left standing in the ruins, my heart pounding in my chest. I had discovered my wife's infidelity, an affair with a professor, the very man who had been guiding her through her studies. The weight of that knowledge hit me like a freight train, and I felt as if I had been knocked off my feet. I staggered back, my mind racing as I tried to process the betrayal. How could she do this to me? Why would she risk everything we had built together for a fleeting moment of passion? I felt a mix of anger, confusion, and deep sorrow wash over me. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I was frozen in place, grappling with the reality of what I had just uncovered. I was a husband betrayed, standing on the precipice of heartbreak, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. The world around me faded into a blur as I stared at the phone in disbelief. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, each beat echoing the betrayal that now consumed my thoughts. I felt as if I was trapped in a nightmare, a cruel twist of fate that I couldn't escape. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. Who was this man? What did he have that I did? Before I could dwell on those thoughts, the sound of a key turning in the lock jolted me back to reality. I quickly shoved the phone into my pocket, my heart hammering in my chest as Anna stepped through the door, her face lighting up upon seeing me. For a brief moment, I wanted to believe that everything was fine, that my suspicions were unfounded. But the truth loomed over us like a dark cloud, ready to unleash its storm. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice bright and cheerful, completely unaware of the turmoil brewing within me. She dropped her bag on the floor and walked toward me, but I stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. The smile on her face faded as she noticed my expression, confusion quickly replaced by concern. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing. I took a deep breath, my chest tightening with the weight of my emotions. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, but the storm inside me was raging. Her eyes widened and I could see the flicker of anxiety cross her face. "What's wrong?" I took a step closer, the distance between us feeling insurmountable. "I saw a message on your phone, a text from someone named Ethan." The color drained from her face, and in that moment I knew. I didn't need to hear her denial or her excuses. I could see it written all over her expression. The realization washed over me like ice water, numbing my senses. "David, I can explain," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "Explain?" I interrupted, my anger boiling over. "How do you explain cheating on your husband? How do you justify betraying the trust we built together?" Her eyes darted around the room, searching for words that wouldn't come. "It's not what you think," she pleaded, but I was done listening. "Not what I think. You think I'm just going to forget that I read those words, that you were excited to see him tonight?" The pain in my chest felt like a vice, squeezing tighter with every word I spoke. "David, please," she said, her voice breaking. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you." Words hung in the air, heavy and tainted. "Love." It felt like a cruel joke now. "How can you say that?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You don't love someone and sleep with another person. You don't betray the one you're supposed to cherish." I could see the tears welling in her eyes, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But it was quickly overshadowed by the anger that surged within me. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. "Is he your professor? Is that why you've been spending so much time at school?" Anna nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, it's Ethan. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." "Did you love him?" I asked, the question cutting through the air like a knife. She shook her head vehemently, but the way her voice wavered made me doubt her sincerity. "I don't love him. I love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry." I didn't know how to respond. The world felt like it was crumbling around me, and I was left standing amidst the wreckage of our marriage. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the love we had shared, but all I could think about was the betrayal. "Do you understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've shattered the trust we had. You've made a mockery of our marriage." Anna stepped closer, reaching for my hands, but I recoiled, the distance between us feeling insurmountable. "David, please. I'll do anything to make this right. Just give me another chance." But how? How could I look at her and not see the woman who had betrayed me? The anger inside me was bubbling to the surface, but beneath it lay a deep sorrow. I felt lost, adrift in a sea of emotions that threatened to drown me. As I stood there, grappling with the reality of what I had just learned, a dark thought began to take shape in my mind. If she had betrayed me, what about the man who had taken her from me? The professor who had seduced her with promises of knowledge and understanding? The thought ignited a flicker of revenge within me. I would make them both pay. But first I needed to gather my thoughts and figure out my next move. The betrayal was fresh, the wound still raw, but I could feel the gears of vengeance starting to turn. I would not let this go unanswered. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind a whirlwind of pain and anger. Anna had fallen asleep on the couch, her sobs echoing in the stillness of our apartment. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Every time I closed my eyes, I was haunted by the image of her and Ethan, laughing together, sharing moments that should have been ours. The betrayal gnawed at me like a persistent ache, and I knew I couldn't just let it slide. The darkness of night eventually gave way to dawn, but the light offered little comfort. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of cold coffee in front of me, staring blankly at the wall. The silence was deafening, and my thoughts raced as I contemplated my next move. I felt like a chess player, my opponent having made a bold, reckless move. Now it was my turn to respond. I needed to do something that would make both Anna and Ethan feel the weight of their actions. I thought about confronting Ethan directly, but I quickly dismissed the idea. He was a professor, a man of authority in her life. He had taken advantage of that power and manipulated Anna into this affair. No, if I wanted to make a statement, I needed to hit them where it hurt most, where they least expected it. That's when the idea struck me like a bolt of lightning. What if I sent Ethan's wife the final exam? Results: I had learned that Ethan was married, but he had hidden that fact from Anna. She had told me about the late-night study sessions, but she had never mentioned his wife. To expose him, to reveal to her that her husband was not only cheating but doing so with a student, would be poetic justice. It would be a way to ensure that both of them faced the consequences of their choices. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I began to search for information on Ethan. It didn't take long to find out that he was indeed married, and I quickly located his wife's name, Rachel. I dug deeper, discovering her social media accounts and the fact that she was a stay-at-home mom dedicated to raising their two children. The thought of her innocence made my resolve stronger. She deserved to know the truth, just as I had been thrust into the harsh reality of Anna's betrayal. I spent the next few hours in a haze of determination, crafting an email that would reveal everything. I gathered the final exam results from the psychology course Ethan taught, making sure that I included his name prominently. I wanted Rachel to know exactly who had betrayed her trust. I imagined her sitting at her kitchen table, reading the email with disbelief, her world crashing down around her just as mine had. As I wrote, the anger that had consumed me began to morph into a sense of empowerment. I wasn't just a victim, I was taking control of my narrative. The idea of sending that email filled me with a rush of adrenaline. It felt like I was reclaiming some semblance of power that had been stripped from me. I would not be the passive husband who accepted infidelity without consequence. I would be the one to deliver the blow. But even as I felt the thrill of revenge coursing through my veins, a part of me hesitated. What if this went too far? What if Rachel's reaction caused more harm than good? I struggled with the moral implications of my plan. Was I justified in seeking vengeance, or was I just as bad as Anna and Ethan? I wrestled with these questions, but ultimately the desire for justice outweighed my doubts. After hours of deliberation, I finally hit send. The email flew through the digital ether, carrying with it the weight of my pain and betrayal. As I leaned back in my chair, I felt a mix of relief and dread. I had taken action, but what would the fallout be? In the days that followed, I watched Anna closely, searching for any sign that she knew what was coming. I wanted to confront her again to gauge her reaction and see if she sensed the storm brewing on the horizon. But she seemed lost in her own guilt, her eyes often red from crying. I felt a strange mixture of sympathy and anger towards her. I had once loved this woman deeply, but now I was a stranger in my own home. As I waited for the inevitable fallout, I found myself packing the apartment, lost in thought. I imagined Rachel reading the email, her shock turning to anger then heartbreak. I envisioned her confronting Ethan, demanding answers, while Anna sat in her own misery, unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. The thought brought me a sense of satisfaction, a twisted form of justice that I had orchestrated. But I also knew that the consequences of my actions would not be limited to Ethan and Anna. I was playing with fire, and the flames could easily engulf me as well. The reality of my decision weighed heavily on my conscience, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I had made my choice, and now I needed to brace myself for what was to come. The day finally arrived when I would hear the first echo of my revenge. The air felt charged with anticipation as I waited for the fallout to reach me. I was ready to face whatever consequences my actions would bring, but deep down, I held on to the hope that justice would prevail. The days dragged on after I sent that fateful email, each hour stretching into what felt like an eternity. I had become hyper-aware of every sound in the apartment, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, and Anna's soft sobs echoing through the walls. My heart raced every time I heard the ping of a notification, each one sending a jolt of anxiety through me. I was waiting for the inevitable fallout, for the moment when my actions would come crashing back on me like a tidal wave. One afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table staring blankly at my laptop, I heard Anna's voice crack as she spoke on the phone. I strained to listen, my heart pounding in my chest. She was talking to someone, her tone shaky and filled with emotion. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the distress in her voice. It was as if she were pleading for understanding, begging for forgiveness. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anticipation of what was to come. I was not the only one who had been wronged. Anna had made her choices, and now she would have to face the consequences. I had taken my first step toward reclaiming my life, and I wouldn't let guilt deter me from seeing it through. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I finally received the confirmation I had been waiting for. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it, my fingers trembling. The message read, "I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Please call me." It was Rachel, Ethan's wife. A surge of adrenaline coursed through my veins as I realized that my plan was working. I had stirred the pot, and now the fallout was beginning to unfold. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation that was about to ensue. I dialed her number, my heart pounding in my chest as the phone rang. Each tone felt like a countdown to a moment of reckoning. When she finally picked up, her voice was shaky, filled with a mix of anger and confusion. "David, is this you?" "Yes, it's me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I received your message. What's going on?" "I just read the email you sent me," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't believe what I'm seeing. Is it true? Is Ethan really cheating on me with your wife?" "Yes," I replied, feeling the weight of the truth settle heavily on my chest. "I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but it's all true. I found out about their affair not long ago, and it has devastated me." Rachel's silence was deafening, and I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. I imagined her processing the information, the shock and betrayal washing over her like a tidal wave. "I don't understand," she finally said, her voice cracking. "How could he do this? How could Anna do this? I thought she was different." The bitterness in her voice stung, but I couldn't blame her for feeling that way. I had once thought the same thing about Anna. "I thought the same about my wife," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "She betrayed me, and I don't think it was just a moment of weakness. There's something deeper there." "Did you confront them?" Rachel asked, her tone sharp and demanding. "I did," I replied, feeling a surge of anger. "Anna tried to deny it, but I saw the messages. She had been lying to me for months." Rachel let out a shaky breath, and I could hear the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "I'm going to confront him. He needs to answer for this. I can't believe he would do this to me, to our family." "I think you deserve answers," I said, my voice firm. "You deserve to know the truth. I'm sorry for the pain this is causing you, but I felt it was necessary to let you know." "Thank you for telling me, David," she said, her voice softening slightly. "I appreciate it. I can't believe I have to deal with this." After we hung up, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. I had taken a step toward justice, but I also felt the weight of the chaos I had unleashed. The thought of Rachel confronting Ethan filled me with a sense of satisfaction, but it also left me with a lingering sense of dread. What would happen when she confronted him? Would he deny it? Would he come clean? And what about Anna? How would she react when she learned that her affair had been laid bare for the world to see? The next few days were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I could sense that something was brewing beneath the surface, but I was also acutely aware of the emotional fallout that lay ahead. Anna remained in a state of despair, her guilt palpable, and I struggled to reconcile my feelings for her with the anger that still burned bright. Then, one evening, as I sat in the living room, I heard the front door open. I looked up to see Anna standing there, her face pale and drawn. She looked like a ghost, and I could see the fear in her eyes. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart racing. "Rachel called me," she said, her voice trembling. "She knows everything." In that moment, I felt a rush of satisfaction mixed with dread. The storm I had set in motion was finally crashing down around us, and I was ready to face the fallout. "Are you ready to talk about what you did?" I asked, my voice steady, ready for the confrontation that lay ahead. Anna's eyes filled with tears, and I could see the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said, her voice breaking. "I made a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough anymore," I replied, my heart hardening. "You need to face the consequences of your actions." As the truth hung silently between us, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control of my narrative. The fallout was here, and I was ready to embrace it. The air in the apartment was thick with tension as Anna's admission hung in the space between us. I could see the panic in her eyes, the realization that her world was unraveling. She had betrayed me, and now the consequences of her actions were crashing down like a storm. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow, knowing that my decision to expose her and Ethan was finally coming to fruition. "What did Rachel say?" I asked, my voice steady, determined to keep control of the conversation. Anna took a shaky breath, her hands trembling at her sides. She was devastated. She couldn't believe Ethan would do something like this. I tried to explain, but she was so angry. She said she was going to confront him tonight. I felt a surge of vindication wash over me. Rachel deserved to know the truth, and I couldn't help but feel that my actions were justified. "Good," I replied. "She deserves answers. You both do." Anna's expression shifted from fear to defiance. "David, I know I messed up, but I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Please, can't we work through this?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of her words, but knowing deep down that it was too late. "You don't get to ask for forgiveness after what you did. You've shattered the trust we built together. I can't just pretend everything is fine." Her tears flowed freely now, and I could see the pain etched on her face. "I never meant for this to happen. I was confused, and Ethan, he made me feel alive again, but it was wrong. I realize that now." "Alive?" I scoffed, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the air. "You think that betraying your husband makes you feel alive? You've betrayed not just me, but Rachel too. You need to take responsibility for your actions." Anna's shoulders slumped, and I could see the fight leaving her. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "First, you need to talk to Rachel. You need to own what you did, not just to me, but to her as well. She deserves to hear the truth from you." "I can't face her," Anna replied, her voice trembling. "I'm scared of what she'll say." "Scared?" I echoed, my anger flaring. "You should be scared. You've turned both our lives upside down, and now you want sympathy. You need to face the consequences of your choices." As I spoke, I could feel the anger boiling within me. I had been the one betrayed, the one left reeling from the shock of her infidelity. And yet here she was, pleading for understanding as if she hadn't just shattered our lives. "David, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I'll do anything to make this right. I'll talk to Rachel. I'll end things with Ethan, I swear." I studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity in her eyes, but all I could see was the fear of losing everything she had. "You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat," I said coldly. "It's too late for empty promises." I could feel the walls closing in around me, the weight of the situation pressing down on my chest. I had set the wheels of revenge in motion, and now I had to face the reality of what I had done. I had hoped that exposing Ethan would bring me some sense of closure, but instead I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure of what lay below. Later that night, as the darkness enveloped the apartment, I received a text message from Rachel. My heart raced as I opened it, bracing myself for the fallout. I confronted Ethan. He denied everything at first, but I showed him the email you sent. He finally admitted it. A mix of satisfaction and dread coursed through me. I had done what I set out to do, but at what cost? "What did he say?" I typed back, my fingers trembling. "He said it was a mistake, that he never meant to hurt me," Rachel replied. "But I can't look at him the same way anymore. I don't know what to do." I felt a pang of sympathy for her. She was caught in a web of lies spun by the man she trusted, just as I had been. "You deserve better than him," I replied. "You deserve someone who will be honest with you." The conversation continued, and I listened as Rachel poured out her heart, expressing her confusion and anger. I offered her support, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the one who had set this chaos in motion. As the night wore on, I could hear Anna sobbing softly in the other room. I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, guilt, and a deep sorrow for the life we had built together. I had sought revenge, but now I was left grappling with the reality of our shattered marriage. The next morning, Anna approached me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "I spoke to Rachel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told her everything." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What did she say?" "She was furious," Anna replied, her voice trembling. "She told me she can't trust Ethan anymore, that she needs time to think. I don't know what will happen next." "Good," I said, my voice firm. "She deserves to take the time she needs. You both need to face the consequences of your actions." Anna looked at me, desperation in her eyes. "What about us? Are we really done?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "I don't know, Anna. I need time to think too. Everything has changed." The reality of our situation settled heavily between us. I had sought revenge, but now I was left with a fractured relationship and a heart full of pain. I couldn't deny the love I once felt for her, but the betrayal was a wound that wouldn't heal easily. As I stared into her eyes, I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. We were both left to navigate the aftermath of our choices, and I had no idea if we would ever find our way back to each other. The days turned into weeks, and the silence in our apartment was deafening. Anna and I moved through our routines like ghosts, haunted by the memories of what once was. I spent time at work, trying to bury myself in my responsibilities, but thoughts of the affair and the chaos it had unleashed were never far from my mind. I had sought revenge, thinking it might bring me a sense of justice or closure, but instead I was left with a hollow ache where love used to reside. Rachel had taken time to process everything, and I couldn't blame her. I had kept in touch with her, offering support and listening to her pain. She had decided to separate from Ethan, a decision I respected, but it was evident that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. She was left to pick up the pieces of her life just as I was. Anna, on the other hand, was a shell of the woman I had once loved. She had become a fixture in our home, moving through her days with a heavy heart. I could see the regret written all over her face, but I struggled to find compassion for her. The betrayal still burned in my chest, a constant reminder of the trust she had shattered. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I heard Anna's soft footsteps approach. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "David, can we talk?" I looked up, my heart racing. "About what?" "I know I messed up," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want you to know how truly sorry I am. I never wanted to hurt you." The sincerity in her voice pierced through the anger I had been clinging to. "You hurt me in a way I can't even begin to describe," I replied, my voice steady. "You shattered our life together for a moment of weakness." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And I regret it every single day. I've been thinking a lot about what I want, and I realize now how much I took you for granted." I felt a mix of frustration and sadness. You don't get to come back and say these things after everything that's happened. Trust is gone, Anna. I don't know if it can ever be rebuilt. "I understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I just want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." As I looked into her eyes, I saw the glimmer of the woman I had fallen in love with, but it was accompanied by the weight of betrayal that loomed large. "I need time to think," I said, my voice firm. "I can't just forget what you did." "I'll give you all the time you need," she replied, her voice breaking. "I just hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I felt a pang of sorrow for the love we had lost, but I also felt a sense of empowerment. I had taken control of my narrative, sought justice, and exposed the truth. Yet the price had been steep, and I was left to grapple with the consequences of my actions. In the weeks that followed, I began to reflect on the nature of betrayal and revenge. I had sought to make them both feel the pain I had endured, but in doing so, I had unleashed a chain of events that affected not just Anna and Ethan, but Rachel and their children as well. The quest for justice had morphed into something more complicated, and I found myself wrestling with the moral implications of my choices. I often thought about Rachel and how she was navigating her new reality. I had offered her support, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been the catalyst for her heartbreak. I wanted her to find happiness again, to rebuild her life, but I also wondered if I had done more harm than good. As I sat in the silence of the apartment, I came to a realization. Revenge may have provided a fleeting sense of satisfaction, but it hadn't healed the wounds in my heart. I was still left with the remnants of a love that had been tainted by betrayal. I needed to decide what I truly wanted moving forward. Was it possible to rebuild with Anna? Could we find a way back to each other after everything that had happened? I knew it would take time, effort, and a willingness to confront the pain head-on. One evening, as I sat on the balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I made a decision. I would take the time to heal, to reflect on what I wanted for my future. I would allow myself to grieve the loss of our marriage, but I would also open myself up to the possibility of forgiveness. Anna had made a terrible mistake, but she was also human, flawed like the rest of us. I couldn't hold on to the anger forever. It was exhausting and ultimately unfulfilling. If I wanted to move forward, I had to let go of the resentment that had taken root in my heart. As the days turned into weeks, I began to find a sense of peace. I started to communicate with Anna more openly, discussing our feelings and the path ahead. It was a slow process, but I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. In the end, I learned that betrayal and revenge are powerful forces, but love, when nurtured, can be even more powerful. It would take time, but I was willing to fight for the love we once shared. I had sought justice, but now I realized that true healing came from understanding, compassion, and the willingness to forgive. As I looked towards the future, I felt a sense of determination. I would not let the shadows of betrayal define me. Instead, I would embrace the journey ahead, ready to face whatever challenges lay in store. And perhaps in the end, both Anna and I would emerge from this storm stronger than before, ready to rebuild the life we had once dreamed of together.